So good day everyone, welcome to our presentation. So today we would like to discuss about a legislative competence and constitutional supreme, which is an analysis of Nick Elin versus Kerajaan Negeri Kelantan. Okay, so now I would like to introduce about my group member. So for the first is Farah Inshira, which is also our group leader. And the second is Chin Chi Hong, that's me. And the third is Chu Si Tong. And the fourth is Hanusri. And the last is Subasri. So now let's move on to our introduction. As you can see on the slides, what we need to understand first is that Malaysia practices a federal system where powers are divided between the federal system and state governments. Each level has its own specific jurisdiction laid out in our supreme law. However, lines can sometimes fail, which brings us to our main focus today. The Nick Elin cases is a landmark federal court decision that codified this division of powers. It stands as a pivotal moment in our recent legal history, testing and defining exactly where state jurisdiction ends and federal jurisdiction begins. In this presentation, our group will take you through how this case will inform Malaysia federalism, and we will also compare our system with the United States. Let's dive into the core details.
Now let me explain the background case of Nick Elin, which the case was brought by a Kelantanese lawyer, Nick Elin Zurina, Nick Abdul Rashid, which together with her daughter, they filed a lawsuit. They challenged 18 law passed by the Kelantan state government in its Sharia Criminal Code 2019. The main argument was not that Islamic law is invalid, but they argued that the Kelantan government overstepped its boundaries. They claim Kelantan made laws for crimes that only the federal parliament has the power to make. Moving on to the court's decisions, the petition was partially successful. This means the court accepted most but not all the applicants' arguments. And the federal court argued that many of the challenged provisions exceeded the powers of Kelantan state legislature. And out of 18 challenged laws, the court threw out 16 laws because they were unconstitutional, therefore it was invalid. The court allowed 2 laws to stay, which is mainly Section 13 and 30, because those two truly belong to Islamic teachings and did not clash with federal law. So the key takeaway is the decision is that state law can make Sharia laws, but only within the limits set by the federal constitution. So the decision was, the petition was partially successful. 16 sections of the Kelantan Sharia law were declared null and void, meaning there are no longer laws, which only the 2 sections remain, which is the 13 and 30. So moving on next to our legal reasoning, which is known as ratio decidendi, which the first principle of the constitutional limit of state power, which is under the federal constitution, state can make Islamic laws, but the authority is not unlimited, but only if that specific topic is not already covered by the federal law. Next is the pith and substance doctrine. The court looks at the law through nature. If a law is actually about public safety or general crime, it belongs to the federal government, even if it wraps out even a bit of the Sharia language, which is the religious language. So in summary, the court reaffirmed that the state has the power of legislative Islamic matters, that power must be operated still under the framework of the federal constitution.
Okay, next I will be briefing about how the Nick Elin case is clarify the powers between the federal government and also state governments under the constitutions. Malaysia practices the federal system where the powers are divided between the federal government and also state government. The Nick Elin case is a landmark federal court decision that clarify the divisions of powers and also strengthen the federal system in Malaysia. First, the case uphold the constitutional supremacy. The HFC confirmed that federal constitution is the highest law in the Malaysia. So this means that all the laws made by the state should be consistent with the constitutions. These decisions make the states do not exceed the limitations the power limitations that have been given to the states. Second, the case also clarified the divisions of powers between the federal government and also state government. The court explained the state governments cannot make laws that fall under the federal jurisdictions such as criminal law. This helps prevent confusions and overlapping laws between the two divisions, which is the federal government and also state government. Thirdly, the case also strengthened the judicial review. In this case, the federal court reviewed the state constitutions of the court of the state laws, and also the federal court declared several provisions are not valid. This is a very important role of judiciary in ensuring the both federal government and also the state government act within their constitution's limits. Finally, the case also maintained the balance between the federal and state government. The court also recognized the states still have authority over the Islamic and also other matters under the state list. In conclusion, the Elin decision strengthened the federalism by upholding the federal court and also clarifying the division of powers between the federal government and also state governments. It also highlighted the role of judiciary in protecting constitutional boundaries.
Okay, so for my part, I'll be discussing about the major similarity between Malaysia and United States federal system. So what do they have in common is their divided sovereignty. So what is that? It's when the powers is distributed between federal government and state government rather than only being controlled by one government. So in Malaysia, right, we have our own federal government and state government. Our federal government, they handle things such as defences, citizenship and foreign affairs, while our state government handles matters in land administration and Islamic affairs. Same goes to United States since they follow the same principle. They have their own federal government where they handle their own national matters, and they have their own state government also where they have the right and power to handle the matters that happens within their state. So the division of powers, right, it is considered to be an important feature in federalism because it allows responsibilities to be distributed to different level of governments. So when this happens, the federal government can solely focus on national matters because it is very important since it could affect the whole country if one wrong decision is taken. And same goes to state government. They can focus more on issues relevant to local communities. And another advantage is that we can avoid from too much power being concentrated on one government because federal government and state government, they have their own responsibilities and own matters that they should look into. So when this happens, when they both have equal responsibilities, the system becomes more balanced and more systematic. Although Malaysia and United States they have different kind of history and different kind of political systems, they follow the same federal principle where they distribute the powers to federal government and state government, where they have to and must fulfill their roles and responsibility. So to sum up my part, the major similarity is what I said before. They have the same divided sovereignty where they distribute the powers, okay, they share the powers between federal government and state government, where they have their own things to handle, they have their own responsibilities that they should fulfill because the system so that the government system becomes more balanced, more systematic and more trustable and more reliable for every citizen. That's all.
Thank you for my teammate. If you think about the federation, we think about a central government with the individual state that share power. This description fit in the Malaysia and also the United States, but they approach different division of power. The major difference is Malaysia operates a centralized system, but the United States, they operate a decentralized system. This can be seen in the 9th schedule of the Malaysia Federal Constitution and also the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution. In the 10th Amendment, it clearly said that if the power is not given to the federal government, then the power will be given to the state and the people itself, which means that all of the state, they have their own significant authorities that they could handle their own affair without the approval by the Washington. On the other hand, we have the 9th schedule of the Malaysia Federal Constitution. But the point is, we have the Article 77 that gives the residual power to the state. But point is, our 9th schedule is so comprehensive. They leave no power to our state. Under the federal list, it covers most area of the governance, including the finance, trade, criminal and civil law, the education, medical health. But our state list is limited to the local issue, like the Islamic law and land. So, how does it actually affect our daily life? As you can see, the United States, they have 50 states, and each state, they have their own legal system. Therefore, they have their own penal code, their criminal procedure. So, for example, if this matters in this state is a serious criminal, but at the other state, it's just totally legal. It is just totally illegal. Just because you cross the border. In Malaysia, we have the 9th schedule. Therefore, our criminal and also the civil law is totally consistent and no legal fragmentation. So, no matter you are in Johor, Penang, or even across the sea, Sabah and Sarawak, the application of law is totally the same. In conclusion, the United States, they operate the decentralized system. They take care about the unique need for their own population. In Malaysia, we are ensure that it is consistent, predictable in our legal system.
So, to bring our presentation to a close, let's wrap up the key takeaways for our analysis. First, the Nick Elin decision strengthened federalism by upholding the federal constitution and clarifying the division of powers between federal and state governments. To it reassures us that the constitutional framework remains robust and supreme, ensuring both levels of governments operate smoothly within their intended limits. Second, these landmark cases is also highlight the important role of the judiciary in protecting constitutional boundaries. The Federal Court acts as the ultimate guardians, ensuring that the legal balance of our nation is preserved without unlawful encroachment. That's conclude in our presentation. Thank you so much for your time and attention.